everyone. My name is Tyler Sellhorn, and welcome to another episode of Speak Easy, the podcast where we discuss communication, capturing our thoughts, and how we share those thoughts with our future selves and others. Managing our brains is core to 21st century work, and we're here to learn about how to do it better than we did yesterday. Thanks so much for listening. Speak Easy is brought to you by Cleft, the easiest way to collect your thoughts. With our cross-platform applications, you can simply capture your ideas wherever you are and paste them where they belong later. Today, we are blessed to be learning out loud with Nadia Harris. Nadia is the author of How to Tackle Hybrid Working and the founder of remoteworkadvocate.com. Nadia is also a remote work lawyer, keynote speaker, university lecturer, and has been published in numerous other publications on flexible working. Nadia collaborates worldwide and is fluent in English, German, Polish, and French. Nadia believes that work opportunities know no borders and that talent shines from everywhere. Nadia, welcome. We're curious, what do you think about the world of work today?
Hi, Tyler. First of all, great to see you. We've seen each other
Great to
in
see
real
you
life.
too.
Yeah, it's been a while. We met in Berlin. I think it's going to be 2 years very soon. Can you imagine?
I
It's
know,
ridiculous.
I know. Yes, it's been my pleasure to follow you around the internet and plus one on your great ideas. And it's awesome to be here learning out loud together.
Likewise, I can just say the same, absolutely the same, and I absolutely enjoy it. So what I think about the world of work, I think, well, it's not difficult to notice that we are in the middle of massive change. And I think this is a complete no-brainer. But at the same time, what I think about it is that there's also a massive clash happening in terms of expectations, in terms of progress, in terms of everything that is outdated, doesn't work anymore. I think resistance also as well. So not only from an operational perspective, but also from a psychological perspective, right? So from a psychological perspective for leadership, right? Who just for whatever reason want to keep things the way before. And I'm talking about senior executives just because it's convenient for whatever reason. And of course, getting out of comfort zones and rebuilding things that is a challenge. And nobody wants to take on the challenge because it's extra work. So why should we question things if they worked in the past? And then equally, when we look at individuals, also from a psychological perspective, when you live in a pattern your entire life and you know how things are structured, suddenly something hits and turns everything upside down. You start thinking, okay, what's important for me? What are my values? Am I really doing what I like doing? How do I understand flexibility? What's important in general? What do I want from work? And then we also see new generations entering the market with completely different expectations, being digitally native. Those are turbulent but both exciting times for me to be in. And I'm super happy to be driving this change based on everything that I believe in myself.
And you said some things there that I'd like to pull on some threads with. And you mentioned leadership, you mentioned psychological change, you mentioned digital native. What is it about digitally native work that is prompting us to seek out new patterns? What is it that we're noticing about the way we work? You mentioned is making things outdated, is driving towards progress, and even maybe some resistance towards that change. How do we make the space for us to choose different psychology in our leadership and the way we work?
Well, it's a very good question. And the response is also not easy because there are different components. So you see, most of the processes that function in companies, they were designed a while ago. So also from a legal perspective, when we look at labor laws in general, they are around 100 years old, right? More or less. So it's very interesting for me to talk about the concept of 9-to-5 work, where I know that it was initially introduced to protect employees from working too much in the industrial era, whereas it's now treated as something you have to be there and clock in and clock out because otherwise we'll just do something to you. Very interesting from a concept in terms of time theft, for example. I get this question a lot from my US clients. We have 2 graphic designers. One of them completed their work faster and they're playing video games afterwards. And one needs more time and wants to be paid for overtime, right? And then my client comes to me and says, oh, the first one, I need to punish them because they committed time theft. And I'm like, what are you talking about? But the one who is inefficient and you're paying extra money, That's not time theft. What are you talking about? These concepts, this way of thinking has to change to a more results-based approach. And now when I talk about digitally native, of course, when we look at all the digital tools, everything that has basically been discovered, maybe not really, but invented within the past, I don't know, 20, 30 years and developed rapidly within the past, I would say, not even 10 years, because I remember that 10 years ago when I lived in the US at that time, there was just Skype. And today we have everything pretty much you can imagine and so many tools. So old processes and the way business was done in the past, within also the generation that started working 30, 20 years ago, they just got used to some processes and some working streams a very certain way. And that is no longer fit for today's digital working era. And here we have the digitally native generation. I am not part of the digitally native generation. I am not part of Gen Z, right? I'm a millennial. So I got my first cell phone. I think I was probably 12, something like that, which means my childhood was completely digitally free. But now when you look at younger generations and the way they work, the way things are super easy for them, they've done it from the very beginning. So now to tell them to start doing things the way they were in the past, where, I don't know, to find some information to write an essay. When I was in elementary school, I had to go to a library, right? And find everything. They can click immediately. And you have to tell them that they have to do things a different way just because that's the way it was. It just doesn't work anymore. That's what I mean. And here, in terms of shifting mindsets, it's very important to understand that change is inevitable and actually collaborate closer together, understand the needs rather than this fight between senior executives and also younger generations, but not just younger generations, but also people like myself who just kind of think through what we really want, what's important in life, right? And we challenge some things that no longer work. And it's about collaboration and mutual understanding rather than saying, this was set in stone. There's nothing you can do about it. You know what I mean?
Okay, I want to build on something you said there. You were mentioning a previous time where we would gather knowledge and build new ideas at a library. And you're mentioning collaboration and how to do that well in the 21st century, in the now of digitally native workforces. What does it look like to gather and capture knowledge in a digitally native way? How do we do that well?
I think we're part of the sharing economy and we see that everywhere in Google, right? To begin with, Google is something that this is a space where you can find everything that's been put there by people, right? So all the knowledge that you get to know when you Google something, it's literally sharing knowledge, right? That's very interesting. When you look at Wikipedia, you see the same logic, right? At the same time. Now, today we of course have AI as well, which especially excuse me, generative AI, where you can also, based on the knowledge that AI was fed with, right? Then it can also help you process, I would say, some knowledge better and faster, make it easier to comprehend, right? And so from my perspective today, I see that it's also very easy because of the internet, because of the fact that we are a global village, to connect with others, to build these connections and to get to know more in some areas where it was more complicated years ago. You see, I remember even during my time as a teenager, where I don't know, wanted to approach a professor at a university because I was doing some kind of study or whatever. I would write an email, but earlier you would need to write a letter, right? Try to find a phone number. You had the phone book, right? Today, everything is very easy to find. But at the same time, the issue that we have today is that lots of knowledge is unfortunately not really reliable. And also, we are living in times where we are being bombarded with everything from every angle you can imagine. And I think the biggest challenge for us to actually share valuable, meaningful knowledge is to build genuine connections, even though we are physically not always together, which is at the same time great because, we're connected. You're in the US, I'm in Europe. Hey, so amazing to have this tool, right? Otherwise, it would be like, I'd send you an email and say, Tyler, when I'm in your neighborhood, let's meet in 3 years. It'd be like, yeah, maybe we'll meet in 3 years, right? So this is amazing. So to filter out all the information you don't want and actually be able to build, I would say, knowledge streams based on what you're looking for, what aligns with your values, your interests, and also connect not only with like-minded individuals, but also with those who inspire you. And that's how you grow.
Okay. I'm curious about your process, the Nadia process. Right? We've been zooming out and talking about the world of work, and we've been talking about how we might suggest a way to do things. But I'm curious about you, Nadia. Tell me about how you capture your own thoughts. What's your process? Where do you put it once you're done gathering your thought? How do you manage those ideas? Tell me about that.
I am not the sometimes I would say I'm not the easiest person to understand because I
Here's the thing that we're learning after talking to guests on. And one of the things I think is so interesting, and this is like intuitively obvious, but it wasn't clear to me until I started having these conversations, is that every brain is unique. Every way of managing and capturing thoughts is their own way of doing things. And so we're just curious about you and like how you do things, because then we can do the analogy of, okay, I like this, but not that. And I would try it that like this. And these are the things that we're doing as we share these ideas with one another.
So I say that sometimes I live in my own parallel world, meaning that I see the things I really want to see and I get inspired by them, right? So it means that I always like to challenge myself and I always look for the root cause of all issues you can potentially imagine. So if someone is telling me, Nadia, this is not going to work because it's just this way, then I always say, oh, that's ridiculous. Like, why? Tell me why. Tell me what the problem is. I'd never accept a response that, oh, it's just not happening because no. So I definitely challenge. I challenge until I find the source. And from my own perspective, in terms of my personal life, I always say that I feed my soul with experiences, right? Different experiences. This is also my lifestyle, also how I travel, how I function. I look for things that are very inspiring to me. I look for people, I look for places. Yeah, different, I would say, experiences, which at the end of the day, with trying to find the root cause and analyze, they bring me to a special place where I think, okay, now I'm going to be with myself for a few moments and I will analyze and think, okay, like what's my conclusion? What just happened? Where does it bring me? How does it add value, for example? Does it respond to a certain, I don't know, problem, to a certain issue? And of course, what I do then, I try to express it in multiple ways. So I write a lot, right? I wrote the book you mentioned. I'm actually in the
Mhm.
middle of publishing another one. I co-authored another book as well. I record lots of videos, very often funny videos. I think it makes it a lot of pleasure. It gives me a lot of pleasure to do that. And I write different articles and sometimes posts and thoughts. And this is how I express myself and everything that I believe in. And I think that, I sometimes like going back like a year or two or three before to look at the evolution of who I've become with all this. And this is really fascinating.
Okay, so you got two things that I really want to like dive deeper on. First of all, you mentioned this like reflection of how things have changed over time. And I really want to put a pin in that because I want to come back to that. But I also am super curious about it was almost like you were about to say, okay, this is where I write best. This is what I have around me when I am capturing my thoughts best. This is where I am and how I'm thinking about when I am writing the scripts for my videos. Take us into that place. You were giving us a little bit of a hint of a mindscape, maybe even a landscape of where you are when you're writing, when you're thinking of scripts for your videos. Where are you? What are you doing? What are you thinking about? Give us a picture of what's going on in your head.
Oh, this is really crazy because so for sure, I would never be able to do anything like this in a cubicle. Number one. Number two, tell me, sit down here and do this. I'd be like, no, because I think you feel the same because you're also a very creative person, right?
Same, same.
Exactly, right? So it needs to be either a surrounding, and I'm not talking about I need to be in a palace, but you walk, you're outside, you're here, you're there, you see something, you suddenly get this thought. For example, it's ridiculous, but I sometimes wake up on Sunday or I don't know, Monday, whatever. But recently I woke up on Sunday. I have no idea why I woke up on Sunday at 6 o'clock in the morning. I mean, this is exactly what you need, right? When you can't sleep in, you wake up at 6 o'clock in the morning. I woke up and I'm like, I have to stop for this video. It's just going to be so freaking amazing, right? Or then, for example, read an article about something that annoys me or something that I think is interesting. Like, oh, you know what? I already need to write about this because I have things to say. Or equally, I go to a place where I observe things and I calm down. I disconnect from everything that I do on a daily basis. And then suddenly I look around and I'm like, hey, I just suddenly had this thought, maybe let's do this, maybe let's do that. And I think what's amazing is that I see it's an ocean of endless opportunities. What I embrace the most is that nobody is telling me what I can or cannot do. I remember times when I was part of corporations where everything had to be pre-approved and I had to be working like exactly going around in circles. And today I can speak freely of what I really think and believe in. And this is the biggest luxury. Literally, it's unimaginable to be able to be in this kind of position.
Okay. You were mentioning earlier that you've done some reflecting on how this has changed over time for you. And I guess maybe I'm inviting you into this space of saying what was before and what is now. Maybe just do the compare and contrast, or maybe even guess about what's to come for you as you think about how you do ideation and brainstorming and gathering your thoughts. I'm wondering how you've looking back, how did that work for you before, and what does it work like now and in the future?
Of course, I have some conclusions because this question doesn't come as a surprise, and I've been thinking about it for a while. When I initially started, not only with my brand, but basically when I started working, I was a person who, and it's maybe hard to believe, but that's the way it was. I thought I had to fit in because fitting in was very normal and appreciated, and that's the way it was. So I think I was fighting with myself for a very long time, trying to be this most accurate Nadia who is doing the right thing. But what the hell is the right thing to begin with? But anyway, let's say it wasn't easy for me, but I tried to talk myself into the fact that this is normal, whatever normal is. Today, we know that there is no definition of whatever and everyone's different. And then when I started, for example, publishing my first pieces a couple of years ago, I thought, okay, so now I'm starting my own brand. I want to have, of course, clients. I wasn't sure what type of client is going to be my client, which is quite very interesting because there is no one type, and I'll get to that in a minute. And I was thinking, okay, so how do I make sure that corporations like me because I'm structured enough and I'm also not challenging some things too much? At the same time, how will startups like me, knowing that they're more agile and have more fancy appearance and this and that? So how do I make sure that I'm somewhere in the middle, right? And when I look at my content and everything that I publish, I try to be very accurate, focus on the knowledge parts, but in a very blunt way, but also without, I would say, adding my personal context. And I also see that when I was invited to participate in webinars, for example, I would say things, it may be controversial what I'm going to say, or I'm sorry I have to say this, or nothing personal, but when I was always like, oh, trying to squeeze in a tiny bit of what I really think, what I really believe. But if something is wrong, that's not me. And then I see with time, I started having the audacity to actually say what I think, explain this in the most logical way possible, because this is not a random thought, whatever I share, but I also have some proof to be able to support the logic of everything that I'm writing. And I see that this is the moment when people really, and I hope so, but I mean, I don't know, views, statistics and everything, and the way I connect with people, it proves that they really value it. And most interestingly, what I'm willing to say in terms of segmenting clients, there is no corporation, startup, blah, blah, whatever. There's one keyword: authenticity.
It's interesting to hear you lean into ideas of identity and like who it is that you are, and that showing up and being expressed in the way that you work and the way that you create content. I've got I'm going back through my notebook of like things that I'm boxing and like wanting to talk more about. I guess maybe I want to invite you to talk about that parallel world that you mentioned, right? And you mentioned it in the context of like being interested in like working with other people, but at the same time having this internal mind that is also interested in getting to the why and finding the root cause and challenging the status quo. And also in the space of, okay, I may be writing and thinking in these other places that aren't with other people and I'm alone, or I'm on a walk, and recognizing that each person is unique and different. Tell us about how you are unique in your own parallel world
Uh,
as you're working with others.
okay, I have a few sentences and quotes I believe in, but one of them is perception drives reality, right? And this is what I believe in absolutely. So, you can look at things in a very blunt way, meaning, oh, this is, I don't know, my surrounding. This is, I don't know, a cup of coffee, whichever I'm going to take. I don't care, but I do, right? So I really do. If it's my favorite cup, if it's this particular color, if I don't know, put it on my desk this way or that way, or I don't know, I walk and I see things, I can say, okay, it's raining outside and it's dreadful, but at the same time, oh, it's just going to be so great when I come back home and I leave the rain behind me and I'll open the windows and I'll be like, oh, okay, I'm not wet anymore and I just can hear the sound of the rain. This is so nice, right? It's a beautiful experience. So in everything that I do, I think in everyone that I meet, but also every situation that happens in my life and also the things that surround me on a daily basis, I try, it's not just probably that I try to see the best things possible. But I would say I'm an optimist, but at the same time, I'm a very realistic person because, of course, I also own my own business. And then, you can be optimistic, but if nothing matches and, the numbers don't add up, you're like, oh, well, let's be a crazy optimist, but it's just nonsense, right? So, of course, I know what it means also to deal with reality, and I definitely do it. But then the way you look at things, you can look at them from a very positive perspective and also try to see all the small things on an everyday basis. Also, when I travel a lot as well. And so, whenever I travel, I come across these opinions that some people say, oh, we hate Paris. Paris is ugly. I'm like, what the hell are you talking about? And especially after the Olympics now, there are so many negative comments. And I'm like, okay, if you want to see it ugly, depending where you go, you'll see it this way. But there are so many inspiring, beautiful thoughts. Or, oh, I don't know, I hate going in Turkey to the bazaars because it's just too loud and they want to sell things. I'm like, yeah, but you can actually go and you can smell all the spices. You can look at all the colors. You can look at these beautiful Turkish rugs. And it all depends what you want to see. If you want to see the things that feed you and give you great experiences, this is your energy that you have at the end of the day and that you can also give back afterwards. But if you're super grumpy and extremely, I would say, blind to the beauty of the world and all of these experiences, then you're just never going to be happy. You're never going to grow. You're never going to be inspired. You'll never have ideas. You'll never think out of the box. Simple as that.
Well, Nadia, I can't think of a better way for us to conclude than to receive your giving back to us and learning out loud with us today and inviting us to be inspired, to be optimistic, to look and to see, to hear and to listen, right? And to be inspired by the places that we go and the people that we interact with and get to the why and get to the root causes and help us to progress and grow together. Thank you so
Absolutely.
much.
Thanks a lot. It's been a great pleasure.
The Speak Easy podcast is brought to you by Cleft, the easiest way to collect your thoughts. With our cross-platform applications, you can simply capture your ideas wherever you are and paste them where they belong later. Check us out at cleftnotes.com. That's CLEFTNOTES.com. Thanks for listening as we think aloud together.